Texans Colts, Robert. I want to get your opinion on this one because this one is. I was a huge Texans fan last year before the year started. I had a CJ Stroud ticket, 9-1 rookie of the year, offensive rookie of the year. I like what they did. The coaching moves. Bringing in God, what's his name? Why am I forgetting it? Great. What's that coach's name?
For who?
Houston. Why am I drawing a blank?
Oh, DeMeco Ryan.
DeMeco Ryan. There we go. DeMeco Ryan. And then I thought their draft picks were great. People were criticizing for, taking the defensive guy out of Alabama at 3. And I'm like, you're not going to get anyone in next year's draft in the first round that's going to be as good as Will Anderson.
Will Anderson's a beast, man.
Yeah. And so I was high on them. They had a great season, way above expectations. And I still like the Texans. But I sit here and look at this line, and I've seen the NFL way too many times to know that it feels trappy. It feels
funny.
like, okay, the public loves the Texans. They had a great season last year. Everyone's loving CJ Stroud off of his great rookie year. And they're only laying 2.5. What people aren't looking at is the fact that this is a division game, right? These games are always tough. They're always close. And the fact that it's been at 2.5 and it kind of edging towards 3, and I expected to get to 3 or more when the public starts going and looking at this and be like, oh, I can get the Texans at 2.5 or I can get them at 3. Of course, they're going to blow out the Colts. I'm not high on the Colts at all. I just know from my experience in betting the NFL, these games tend to be pretty close, and I wouldn't be shocked if the Colts ended up winning this game. And the public kind of, the sports books winning big on this one with the Colts. What do you think about this one, Robert?
Do you think that it's an automatic step down now that the Wazoo legend Gardner Minshew, the mustache, is gone from Indianapolis? But we'll see. It's a bit. He's now with the Raiders. He's going to be starting with the Raiders. The mustache.
We love the Gardner. We're big Gardner fans around here, Uncle Bob.
Well, Gardner Minshew. Wazoo legend, great mustache.
Those were fun times.
And he's always a gamer. He's like Jacoby Brissett, who I think is being a little bit underrated. There's certain guys that are really good backups in this league. Whether you want them starting a whole season, maybe not, but that they are the best backups in the league, and they're going to constantly get paychecks in the NFL because they're not going to lose you many games like a lot of backups will.
It's what you can do if you don't go out there like a Nathan Peterman and throw 4 picks and a half, right? If you could just not turn the ball over, you don't have to be spectacular, just game manage. It's amazing how hard that is to do for quarterbacks in the league.
I think, how long was Peterman at Tennessee, Cricket? Like a year or 2?
Yeah, it wasn't long. He wasn't there his entire career. I think he wound up getting maybe 2 seasons down there, but still didn't do much down there either. That's what I'm saying. I would much rather have Gardner Minshew over Nathan Peterman.
Yeah, no doubt about that. I agree. Historically, trends-wise, all the trends would say Colts. You bet the small underdog in week 1. You bet the small underdog at home in week 1. You bet the team that missed the playoffs against the teams that made the playoffs in week 1 if they're an underdog. And then as you highlighted, division underdogs at home early in the season have been cashing for as long as there have been divisions in the NFL. So it's definitely, this is a trappy line to trap the public into betting the Texans, keeping it under 3, trying to get as much money on the Texans. I think if they put in an honest line, they would have made it a pick 'em. Not a Texans -2, 2.5, maybe leak up to 3. No question that the Texans made some nice moves in the offseason. I think I'm not yet sold that Diggs is quite the receiver he used to be. I think there's a reason why Buffalo had no problem letting him go. If you'd watched down the last half of that season, you wouldn't have known he was on the roster frequently for the Bills, and that wasn't just play calling. So we'll see how that works. But I think there's a lot of excitement over some of the Texans offseason additions. I'm not quite as sold.
They got Mixon as well.
Yes.
Which I think he's kind of getting past his prime too.
Completely. I've never been a huge Mixon fan. The Bengals have been obsessed with running the ball, want to be a physical dominant running the ball over the time he was there. They had Burrow and Chase and everybody else, and they still couldn't run the ball consistently. And I like Mixon. He's a solid guy, but the Texans offensive line, it should be healthier this year than where it was much of last season until late in the season. But they never struck me as a great running team, but they think they are. And the offensive coordinator is obsessed with it, even with CJ Stroud. Like, people keep praising that coordinator, and I'm like, Stroud was fantastic last year.
Yeah, there was all those big plays that they made. They would start the game off with a 75-yard bomb, so you had to respect that. And, yeah, that opens up the running game a little bit, but you're right. They definitely are not a dominant running team.
No, and yet they play like, I mean, he calls plays like Pete Carroll, and it's not, run, 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 run,
Mhm.
run, run, run. So I'm not as sold as everybody else is. I mean, the bottom line is Stroud I thought was going to be a fantastic talent. And he is
Mhm.
one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the league, at least from a future prospect perspective. But I'm still not sold on the rest of that team being an elite team. Good team, yes. Elite team, no. Now you look at the Colts. I mean, the coaching staff is fantastic. They proved that last year, even with all the injuries, all the issues that they had, contract issues to start the year with Jonathan Taylor. They were a play or two away from knocking the Texans out and being in the playoffs.
Mhm.
So now you return Anthony Richardson. You still have one of the best offensive lines in football. You have Jonathan Taylor to help run the ball. You have a solid receiving core. You have a solid defense. And so it's like, why shouldn't they be seen as just as good as the Colts unless you think Richardson is a step down from Minshew? I mean, that's how because the rest of the team, I think, is slightly better than the Texans team. The Stroud always gives the Texans an edge, but this game's on the road in a division rivalry. The only reason to bet the Texans is if you really are down on Richardson. Now, I was down on Richardson because he couldn't hit the right side of a barn with any consistency when he was at Florida. And of course, those issues keep coming back up.
Yeah.
But you have all this off-season time to prepare for the Colts. You have one of the best offensive minds in the NFL, a guy who made Jalen Hurts look like he was a Hall of Famer. And just 2 years ago, with Richardson, he can definitely run the ball. That's never been an issue there. I also lean Colts in this game, but I think their season prospects are going to depend on a major step up by Anthony Richardson.
Yeah, and in any one game, we've seen the NFL. I don't think still has adapted to this yet. I don't think it's just too hard to. You got these guys like the Kyler Murrays who bad team can keep you in a game, one game standalone game. He can keep you in it even if it's a superior opponent, just because of the playmaking ability of being an athlete, be able to scramble. You can't really prepare for that as a defense. And I'm not high on Richardson either, but in one game here, I expect him to, get that third down play that they wouldn't have usually gotten, but the fact that he can run the ball and keep this game close. What about you, Cricket?
Yeah, man. These teams like the Texans, like last year, the Texans came into that thing and they were, heavily undervalued. You thought they were going to have a rough season coming off top 5 picks and all that. And they wind up making a run to the playoffs, having a great year. And I look to fade teams like that usually coming into the next season when they benefited, from a plus turnover margin there, largely due to C.J. Stroud not throwing interceptions. Uncle Bob, I think I bet C.J. Stroud to throw a pick like 7 weeks in a row, and I finally hit it. I did not break even on that one for sure. But I think the Texans do take a little bit of a step back right here. You go on division on the road right off the rip here. And the Colts, like you said, have a solid roster all throughout. We got to remember, too, even if Anthony Richardson played bad, there's a guy sitting behind him now, Joe Flacco, who came in last year and really kind of helped the Browns close that thing out after they did not have a quarterback anymore. So Joe Flacco still can play. I don't think he's the guy you want in there every single week all season long. But Anthony Richardson, we don't really know what we're getting out of him just yet. Obviously, a really talented guy, athletic and all that. But the turnovers, like AK says, have been an issue. The accuracy, like Robert said, has been an issue. So, we just gotta wait and see. We got such a small sample size from him in the league because he got hurt in like week 5 last year or whatever it was. So we haven't seen a lot from him to know for sure what we're going to get just yet. But this line just feels funny to me. I feel like it should be the Texans moved out a little bit more there just based off what the public thinks we're going to see. But that also makes me scared of the Texans because usually when Vegas has a team like this where everybody's so high on coming into a season, I usually tend to see some regression from the previous year. So I think the Texans are going to take a step back from a season standpoint. And I do like the Colts in week 1 here.
Yep. I think that's the sharper side is the Colts side because it's an ugly pick. It's ugly.
It is ugly.